There is a room beneath the floor of the most visited temple on Earth. It has not been opened, it has not been excavated, it does not appear on any architectural plan. And the researchers who found it published their findings in a peer-reviewed journal, then went home. Most people walk right past it. They come to Angkor Wat for the carvings, for the towers, for the reflections in the moat at sunrise. They walk those stone corridors for hours. They photograph the bas-reliefs of celestial dancers and battle scenes. Then they leave. And beneath the very floor they walked on, sealed inside a void that ground-penetrating radar has confirmed but no one has entered, something is waiting. Not a myth, not a metaphor. A physical space. Below the stone, beneath the central sanctuary of the largest religious monument ever built by human hands. This is what was found. This is what was not explained. And if you stay until the end of this video, you are going to understand why what is buried beneath Angkor Wat may matter more than the temple itself. If this kind of investigation is something you want to see more of, subscribe now, because what's coming in the next few minutes is going to fundamentally change how you see this place. Let's go back to the beginning. In 2009, a researcher named Till Sonneman from Leiden University dragged a ground-penetrating radar unit across the stone paving of Angkor Wat's western enclosure. The machine sends high-frequency radio pulses into the ground and measures how they bounce back. Different densities reflect differently. Air reflects differently than sand. Stone reflects differently than disturbed soil. The machine builds a cross-sectional picture of what lies beneath, layer by layer, meter by meter. What Sonneman found in the western section was already remarkable. Beneath the earth, hidden below the causeway approach to the main temple, the radar revealed the outline of 8 towers. Not existing towers, demolished towers. The foundations, the laterite cores, the symmetrical arrangement of a structure that had been built, used, and then intentionally torn down before the construction of the temple you can visit today. This discovery was published in the journal Antiquity in December 2015. It confirmed that before King Suryavarman II razed Angkor Wat in the first half of the 12th century, something else was already there. A sacred site, already established, already old. For decades, scholars assumed Angkor Wat was built on relatively empty land, chosen for its proximity to the Siem Reap River and the Tonle Sap Basin. But hidden inside it is something that shouldn't exist. Evidence of a prior civilization of builders who had already consecrated this ground, who had already raised towers here, and whose structures were systematically buried before the new temple was built over them. Here's where it gets strange. The buried towers were not ruins, they were not collapsed, they were demolished. Carefully, the material was partially recycled, and the ground above them was graded and prepared for the new construction. Whoever built Angkor Wat knew the towers were there. They chose to bury them, not remove them. They chose to build on top of them, not beside them. That is not the behavior of a civilization that stumbled on an empty field. That is the behavior of a civilization that understood what was already sacred about this ground and what was already hidden beneath it. Now let's talk about the radar anomaly in the central sanctuary. In subsequent surveys using LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, and aerial imaging, researchers mapped the full underground topography of Angkor's central complex. In 2016, archaeologist Damian Evans led a team that published what is now considered the most comprehensive LiDAR analysis of the Angkor region ever conducted. The results revealed a previously unknown megacity surrounding the temple. Streets, reservoirs, suburbs of hundreds of thousands of people, all invisible from ground level, all hidden beneath the jungle floor. The scope of what was found changed estimates of Angkor's population from the tens of thousands to potentially 1 million or more. But buried inside those radar returns, less publicized, less discussed, was a structural anomaly directly beneath the central sanctuary. Not in the outer enclosures, not beneath the innermost tower. The one that sits at the exact geometric center of the entire complex. The one that is aligned to true west, the one that faces the rising sun on the spring equinox, with a precision that researcher Eleanor Manica spent years calculating and confirmed in astronomical tables published in 1996. The anomaly appears in the GPR data as a void, an air pocket, a space that does not correspond to any known structural feature of Khmer temple architecture. It is not a drainage channel. It is not a settling crack. It is a room. The Cambodian Apsara Authority, which oversees all excavation and preservation at Angkor, has not approved any groundbreaking investigation of the central sanctuary. The tower is structurally sensitive. That is the official reason. But the chamber remains sealed. The report was published. The anomaly was noted. And then the conversation moved on. Let's look at the first clue. The Khmer inscription carved into the southern gate of Angkor Wat, translated and catalogued by French epigraphist Georges Codes in the mid-20th century, contains a line that has been interpreted as religious poetry. The inscription describes the temple as the dwelling place of the god who resides beneath the stone mountain, who was placed there before the mountain was raised. Standard translation in the secondary literature reads this as a metaphor, the god Vishnu as the foundation of the universe, the stone mountain as the symbolic representation of Mount Meru, the cosmic axis of Hindu cosmology. But that explanation has a problem. The phrase does not say the god dwells inside the mountain. It says the god was placed beneath the stone before the mountain was raised above him. That is not a metaphor for cosmic order. That is a description of a sequential act. Something was interred first. Then the structure was built on top of it. In plain language, it is a description of a burial followed by a construction. And now we know that something was buried at this site before Angkor Wat was built. We know the towers were demolished and covered. We know there is a sealed void beneath the central sanctuary. And we have an inscription that says, in the language of its time, that the god was put there before the temple was raised around him. The second clue is the spiral. In the same 2015 survey, researchers discovered a massive structure made entirely of compacted sand. It surrounds the temple's outer wall at a distance of several hundred meters. It is approximately 1 mile in total length, and it takes the form of a spiral. Multiple nested rectangles arranged in a labyrinthine pattern, curving inward toward the center of the complex. The researchers called it a garden. They noted it was archaeologically sterile, meaning it contained no artifacts, no pottery, no tools, no organic material that could identify its purpose. But consider what that means. Someone moved enormous quantities of sand. Someone arranged that sand in a precise spiral geometry. Someone did this without leaving a single artifact behind. And this structure is not mentioned anywhere in the Khmer inscriptions. It was not commemorated. It was not described. It simply exists beneath the ground, oriented around the temple, like a kind of outer boundary marker. Gardens do not typically take the form of spirals, and agricultural plots intended to feed a temple community do not need to be encoded in nested rectangular geometry. The mainstream explanation for the spiral is that it may have held plants used in ritual offerings. The pattern may have had spiritual significance. That is the full extent of the published analysis. For decades, scholars dismissed it as symbolic. But spirals in ancient sacred architecture are not decoration. They are instruction. Every major megalithic culture that used spiral geometry in its sacred structures used it to encode movement. The movement of water, the movement of the sun, the movement of a procession or a ritual path. In Neolithic Ireland, the spirals at Newgrange align with the winter solstice. At Tarxian in Malta, the spiral threshold stones encode the passage between the living and the dead. Spirals in sacred geometry are almost universally associated with transition, with thresholds, with the distinction between the world above and the world below. The third clue is the orientation. Angkor Wat is the only major Hindu temple in Cambodia that faces west. Every other major temple in the region faces east. West, in Khmer religious tradition, is the direction of death. It is the direction of the setting sun, of endings, of the realm of the ancestors. Scholars have debated this for over a century. The standard explanation is that Angkor Wat was conceived from its inception as a funerary temple, a monument to house the posthumous cult of Suryavarman II, a kind of national mausoleum built in advance of the king's death. That is a reasonable explanation, but it is incomplete, because if the orientation was chosen for funerary purposes, and if the inscription says something was interred beneath the floor before the temple was raised, and if the GPR scan has confirmed a sealed void beneath the central tower, then the chamber beneath the floor is not an accident of construction. It was the point. The entire structure was built around it. The towers were demolished and buried to make way for it. The spiral was drawn in the ground around it. The whole monument is oriented toward the dead, because what is beneath it was already dead when the building began. Then, modern science found something that changed everything. In 2016, a team from the Greater Angkor Project, led by Damian Evans, used airborne LiDAR to map over 734 square kilometers of the Angkor region in a single survey pass. Published in the Journal of Archaeological Science, the results revealed something that had been invisible for nearly 1,000 years. Beneath the jungle canopy surrounding the temple complex, the LiDAR data showed clear evidence of a pre-Angkorian urban grid. Streets laid out in a cardinal orientation, water management earthworks, platform foundations of buildings whose construction predated the stone temples by potentially 3 centuries. Sediment core samples taken from the base of Angkor's largest reservoir, the West Baray, showed organic material dating to between the 7th and 8th centuries CE, roughly 400 years before Suryavarman II is believed to have founded the site. The carbon dating was published, the results were noted, the official timeline was quietly adjusted to acknowledge earlier occupation. But the central question was not asked. If people were living here for hundreds of years before Angkor Wat was built, what were they worshipping? What sacred structure occupied the center of their city? And when Suryavarman II chose this exact spot for his monument, when he ordered the pre-existing towers demolished and buried, when he built the largest temple complex in human history directly above a sealed void in the ground, was he claiming a legacy or protecting a secret? The expedition that attempted to core sample the central sanctuary soil in 2004 was granted preliminary approval by the Cambodian Ministry of Culture. The fieldwork was organized, the equipment was transported to site. 3 days before drilling was scheduled to begin, the permit was withdrawn. The official reason given was structural sensitivity. The team published a brief note in the International Journal of Heritage Studies, acknowledging that the planned investigation could not proceed. They went home. The chamber remained sealed. The investigation has not been rescheduled. Now, does this prove the most extreme version of the story? Probably not. It is entirely possible that the sealed void beneath the central sanctuary is a structural feature of Khmer architecture that simply has no parallel in other excavated temples, because no other inner sanctuary of this scale has been fully surveyed. It is possible the spiral sand structure is exactly what researchers say it is. And it is possible the inscription about the god placed beneath the stone before the mountain was raised is entirely theological in intent, with no literal reference to a physical burial. But that doesn't make the discovery ordinary, because even in the most conservative reading of the available evidence, what the scans have confirmed is this. Angkor Wat was built on top of an older sacred site. That older site was deliberately buried. The ground beneath the central tower contains a void that no one has entered. And the people who built the largest temple in human history left an inscription saying that whatever was placed there first, and the temple was raised above it afterward. That sequence matters. If the chamber is simply structural, it is the most unusual structural feature in the entire complex, located in the most significant architectural position in the entire monument. In a building whose orientation is explicitly funerary in character. If the chamber contains a burial, it is not the burial of Suryavarman II. His remains have never been found. His deification as Vishnu was recorded in the inscriptions, but no physical interment at Angkor Wat has ever been confirmed. The central sanctuary should contain his mortuary cult image. It should contain the object of worship. It should, according to the inscription, contain the god who was placed there before the mountain was built. Not a symbolic god, not a painted one, a placed one. The Khmer word used in the inscription is a specific verb form that denotes deliberate physical displacement. The same verb appears in other Khmer texts, in contexts that unambiguously describe the installation of a physical object into a prepared space. Not a metaphor, a technical description of an active placement. And if that's true, it means our history is missing a chapter. It means Angkor Wat is not a monument to a king. It is a monument built over something that was already considered sacred by a civilization that preceded it by centuries. And that civilization, whoever they were, chose this spot and this ground for a reason that has been buried, literally buried, beneath 9 centuries of stone and religious iconography and tourist traffic. The floor is still there, the chamber is still sealed. The Apsara Authority still lists the central sanctuary as restricted for excavation pending structural assessment. The assessment has been pending since 2004. The radar data is archived. The published papers are available online. The permit application is on file somewhere in a government office in Phnom Penh. And a mile away, beneath the jungle soil, the spiral is still there, drawing its invisible geometry around the temple, pointing inward, pointing down, toward whatever was placed in the ground before the mountain was raised above it. It was sealed, it was mapped, and then it disappeared from the conversation. The next time you see a photograph of Angkor Wat reflected in the moat at sunrise, remember that you are looking at the surface of something. And beneath that surface, beneath the causeway and the galleries and the stone corridors and the carved gods, beneath the floor of the innermost tower of the largest religious structure in human history, there is a room that has not been opened. And we do not know what is inside it. If this investigation opens something up for you, hit like and subscribe. There are more of these waiting for you. And if you want to go deeper, there is a video right after this one that will take you somewhere else entirely, somewhere that was sealed for the same reason. Go watch it now.